Ryan Mitchell stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror of his small apartment in downtown Chicago. The fluorescent light was unforgiving, highlighting every fold of skin that hung from his 6-foot frame. At 32 years old and 387 pounds, his body had become both his prison and his identity. He splashed cold water on his face, trying to wash away the memory of yesterday's humiliation at the marketing firm where he worked as a graphic designer. Just ignore them, his mother had always told him when classmates teased him in school. But those childhood taunts had evolved into something more insidious in adulthood, whispers behind his back, the grimaces when he squeezed into the elevator, and worst of all, the way potential clients sometimes requested someone else to present his work. Ryan dried his face and checked the time. He was running late again, a habit born from his reluctance to face the world. The walk to the L train was only 3 blocks, but by the time he reached the station, his shirt would be soaked with sweat, providing more ammunition for the covert glances and silent judgments. The Chicago summer was particularly brutal this year. As Ryan made his way down the busy sidewalk, he felt the familiar burning sensation as his thighs rubbed together. His breathing grew labored, each step a reminder of the weight he carried. A group of teenagers passed by, one of them nudging another and snickering. Ryan pretended not to notice, a skill he'd perfected over the years. At work, Ryan's talents were undeniable. His designs consistently impressed clients, but his ideas were often presented by Jake, the firm's charismatic account executive. Today was different. Their biggest potential client, a national fitness chain, was visiting, and Ryan's campaign concept had been selected as the frontrunner. For once, his boss had insisted that Ryan present his own work. "This is your chance, Mitchell," Mr. Donovan had said. "Show them what you've got." The presentation room was packed when Ryan entered. He felt the weight of everyone's eyes as he made his way to the front, the chair creaking ominously as he sat down. He'd spent hours preparing, rehearsing his pitch until the words flowed naturally. But as he stood before the fitness company executives with their perfect bodies and judgmental stares, his confidence wavered. "This is Ryan Mitchell," Mr. Donovan announced. "The creative mind behind the campaign we're about to show you." Ryan took a deep breath and began. His voice, usually soft and hesitant, grew stronger as he delved into his work. The room seemed to shift as people leaned forward, engaged by his concepts. For 15 glorious minutes, Ryan wasn't the fat guy. He was just a talented designer sharing his vision. Then came the questions. Ryan handled them expertly until the fitness company's marketing director, a woman with a body that suggested she lived in the gym, leaned forward with a smirk. "I have to ask," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "How does someone like you understand what motivates people to get fit?" The room fell silent. Ryan felt his face burning as the implications of her question sank in. "Someone like you." The words hung in the air, a reminder that no matter his talents, people would always see his size first. "I understand human desire," Ryan finally replied, his voice steady despite the trembling in his hands. "The desire to be better, to be seen differently. That's universal." The meeting concluded shortly after, with promises to be in touch. As people filed out, Ryan remained seated, unable to face the sympathetic glances from his co-workers. Only Jake lingered behind. "That was brutal, man," he said, perching on the edge of the table. "But you handled it like a pro." Ryan nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Jake was one of the few people at work who treated him like a normal person, though Ryan sometimes wondered if it was genuine or just Jake's natural charm. Later that night, Ryan found himself doing what he always did after a particularly difficult day, standing in front of his open refrigerator, seeking comfort in food. He'd already ordered and devoured a large deep-dish pizza, but the hunger, or whatever it was that drove him to eat, remained insatiable. As he reached for the container of leftover pasta, his phone pinged with a notification. It was an email from Mr. Donovan. "We got the account. The fitness chain loved your concept. They want to move forward immediately." Ryan should have felt elated, vindicated. Instead, a bitter laugh escaped his lips. They loved his work, but hated the package it came in. He closed the refrigerator without taking anything, a small victory in a day filled with defeat. That night, lying in bed, Ryan stared at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above him. The familiar weight of his body pressed him into the mattress, a constant reminder of his failure to control the one thing that defined him in others' eyes. He thought about his mother, who had passed away 2 years ago from complications related to diabetes, another disease that had quietly stalked their family, fed by the same comfort food that had gotten them through the tough times. "You have so much to offer the world, Ryan," she had told him during their last conversation. "Don't let them convince you otherwise." Ryan closed his eyes, letting a tear slip down his cheek. Tomorrow would be another day of the same struggle, the same judgments, the same Ryan. Or would it? Something stirred within him, not quite resolve, not yet determination, but the first flicker of possibility. What if tomorrow could be different? The video was grainy, but unmistakable. Ryan, walking down Michigan Avenue, his massive frame moving laboriously through the crowd. Then the fall, his ankle turning on an uneven section of pavement, his body crashing down with such force that nearby pedestrians jumped back. But it wasn't the fall that made the video go viral. It was what happened next. A group of business-suited men nearby erupted in laughter. One pulled out his phone to record, narrating with mock concern, "And here we witness the rarely seen North American land whale returning to its natural state." The others joined in, adding their own cruel commentary as Ryan struggled to his feet, his face a mask of humiliation and pain. The video, titled "When Planets Fall," had nearly 2 million views by the time Ryan discovered it 3 days later. It had been shared in office emails, on social media, and even featured on a late-night talk show segment about urban wildlife. Ryan had wondered why people at work were giving him strange looks, why the barista at his regular coffee shop couldn't meet his eyes. Now he knew. Ryan sat in his darkened apartment, the glow of his laptop illuminating his tear-streaked face as he read comment after vicious comment. People he'd never met dissecting his body, making assumptions about his character, his hygiene, his worth as a human being. The worst part wasn't the strangers. It was recognizing usernames of people he knew, even some he considered friends, adding their own jokes to the pile. He slammed the laptop shut and reached for his phone to order his usual comfort food. But something stopped him. A memory surfaced. His mother in her hospital bed, tubes snaking from her body, her once vibrant spirit diminished by a body that had finally betrayed her. "It doesn't have to be this way for you," she had whispered, squeezing his hand with what little strength she had left. Ryan put down his phone and walked to the bathroom. He stripped off his clothes and forced himself to look in the full-length mirror, really look for the first time in years. The body that had been a source of shame for so long stared back at him, but for the first time, Ryan saw beyond the fat. He saw a prison of his own making, one that he had the keys to escape. That night, Ryan didn't order takeout. Instead, he opened his laptop again, but this time he bypassed the video and its comments. He created a new document and titled it simply, Day 1. The next morning, Ryan called in sick to work. He couldn't face those who had seen the video, not yet. Instead, he made an appointment with Dr. Sarah Chen, a physician specializing in obesity treatment, whom his health insurance had been urging him to see for years. The waiting room of Dr. Chen's office was designed for larger patients, sturdy chairs without arms, wider doorways, scales discreetly tucked away in private rooms. Still, Ryan felt the familiar anxiety as he sat among others struggling with their weight. When his name was called, he followed the nurse down the hall, flinching as the blood pressure cuff strained around his arm, avoiding the numbers on the scale as she recorded his weight. Dr. Chen was not what Ryan expected. A petite woman in her 50s with kind eyes, she spoke to Ryan with a directness that was refreshing after years of doctors who either scolded him or tiptoed around his weight. "I'm not going to tell you this will be easy," she said, after a thorough examination and review of his history. "But I believe you can do this, Ryan, not through some miracle diet or surgery, but through consistent, sustainable changes." For the first time in years, Ryan felt something close to hope. Dr. Chen didn't promise rapid transformation or judge him for his past choices. Instead, she worked with him to create a realistic plan, a moderate calorie deficit, physical activity that wouldn't destroy his already strained joints, and most importantly, therapy to address the emotional eating that had been his coping mechanism for so long. "This isn't just about losing weight," she explained. "It's about healing your relationship with food, with your body, and with yourself." Ryan left the office with a stack of resources, referrals, and a follow-up appointment scheduled for the following month. On the way home, he stopped at a grocery store, not his usual one, where he often hid his purchases among healthier items to avoid judgment, but a new place where nobody knew him. He filled his cart with the foods on Dr. Chen's suggested list, ignoring the familiar pull toward the aisles of processed comfort foods. That evening, Ryan prepared a simple meal of grilled chicken and vegetables. It wasn't particularly satisfying, and the portions seemed laughably small compared to his usual dinners. But as he ate, he wrote in the journal Dr. Chen had suggested, "Day 1. Food is fuel, not comfort. This feels impossible, but so did presenting to that fitness client. I did that. Maybe I can do this too." After dinner, Ryan forced himself to go for a walk. Just around his block, nothing ambitious. His ankles ached, his back protested, and he was drenched in sweat after just 10 minutes. But he completed the loop. Back in his apartment, he added to his journal, "Walked 0.4 miles. Thought I might die. Didn't." Before bed, Ryan did something impulsive. He created a new Instagram account, not under his name, but simply "A Day One to Change," and posted a photo of his dinner and a brief caption about starting a journey. No face pics, no mentions of the viral video, just an honest statement about deciding to change. He expected nothing, perhaps a few bot followers at most. By morning, the post had 17 likes and 3 comments. All encouraging, all from strangers. It wasn't much, but to Ryan, those 17 likes felt like the first people who had ever seen him as more than just his size. He smiled as he prepared his breakfast according to Dr. Chen's plan, then wrote in his journal, "Day 2, someone out there is rooting for me. I should try rooting for myself too." 6 months passed in a blur of small victories and crushing setbacks. Ryan had lost 68 pounds, a significant amount, yet barely noticeable on his still obese frame. There were days when the old cravings became overwhelming, when he'd find himself in the drive-through line before consciously deciding to go there, when the voice of self-loathing was louder than his determination. But there were also new experiences. The first time he could tie his shoes without holding his breath, the day he walked a full mile without stopping, the morning he realized he'd slept through the night without his sleep apnea machine alarming. Small miracles that kept him going when the scale seemed frozen, or when he caught glimpses of the viral video that continued to circulate. A digital ghost he couldn't exorcise. Ryan's Instagram account had grown steadily, reaching almost 5,000 followers. He still never showed his face, focusing instead on his meals, his daily walks, now up to 3 miles, and honest captions about his struggles and triumphs. His anonymity allowed him to be vulnerable in ways he never could be in real life. At work, things had slowly improved. The viral video had eventually been overshadowed by newer internet sensations, and Ryan's continued success with the fitness chain client had earned him a grudging respect. He'd even begun to join colleagues for lunch occasionally, bringing his prepared meals instead of making excuses to eat alone at his desk. Jake, the account executive who had initially shown him kindness, had become something like a friend. Today they were meeting at a small cafe near their office to discuss an upcoming presentation. Ryan arrived first, no longer winded by the 6-block walk from the office. He chose a table with sturdy chairs and waited, sipping water instead of his once customary sugary coffee drink. "You're looking good, man," Jake said as he slid into the seat across from Ryan. "Whatever you're doing, it's working." Ryan smiled, still uncomfortable with comments about his appearance, even positive ones. "Thanks. It's a work in progress." "Seriously, you must have lost what? 50 pounds? Almost 70, actually," Ryan replied, a hint of pride in his voice. "That's amazing. What's your secret?" The question was innocent enough, but it made Ryan bristle. There was no secret, just months of grueling work, therapy sessions where he sobbed as he confronted childhood traumas, nights of white-knuckling through cravings, and mornings of forcing himself to exercise when every fiber of his being screamed to stay in bed. "No secret," Ryan said finally, "just eating less and moving more." Jake nodded, clearly hoping for a more interesting answer, then changed the subject to work. As they discussed the presentation, Ryan noticed a woman at a nearby table, glancing their way repeatedly. He instinctively hunched his shoulders, a habitual response to being observed, until he realized with a start that she was looking at him with interest, not disgust. It was such an unfamiliar experience that Ryan nearly missed what Jake was saying. "Sorry, what was that?" Ryan asked, dragging his attention back to the conversation. "I said, have you thought about joining the company softball team? We could use someone with your height." 2 months ago, such an invitation would have been unthinkable, both that Jake would ask and that Ryan would consider it. Now, though still far from athletic, Ryan could move in ways that had been impossible before. "I'll think about it," he said, surprising himself with his sincerity. That night, Ryan sat in Dr. Sarah Chen's office for their monthly check-in. His blood pressure was down, his resting heart rate had improved, and the scale showed another 5-pound loss. "You're doing exceptionally well, Ryan," Dr. Chen said, reviewing his numbers. "How are you feeling mentally?" Ryan considered the question carefully. "Better in some ways. I have more energy. I don't dread getting out of bed every morning, but sometimes I feel like I'm in limbo. Not who I was, but not yet who I'm trying to become." Dr. Chen nodded. "That's a common experience during major life changes. Your body is changing faster than your self-image. Your brain still sees the 387-pound Ryan when you look in the mirror." "Exactly," Ryan said, relieved to have his feelings validated. "And I'm starting to wonder, will losing the weight fix everything? Will people suddenly respect me, include me? Or am I just going to be the same person with less padding?" "That's a profound question," Dr. Chen replied. "Weight loss can change how others perceive you, yes, but the real transformation happens in how you perceive yourself." On the train ride home, Ryan mulled over Dr. Chen's words. He opened Instagram and was greeted with hundreds of notifications, far more than usual. Confused, he scrolled through his feed until he found the source. A popular fitness influencer had shared one of his posts, a before and after photo of his dinner plates from day one compared to now. "This anonymous account is the real deal," the influencer had written. "No products to sell, no miracle solutions, just honest documentation of the hardest thing a person can do, change." Ryan's follower count was exploding, jumping by the hundreds as he watched. The comments section of his latest post was flooded with messages of support and questions about his journey. Some shared their own struggles, thanking him for his honesty in a space often dominated by unrealistic transformations and sponsored content. For the first time, Ryan felt a responsibility to these strangers who had found hope in his journey. He opened his camera and, after a moment's hesitation, took a photo of himself. Not a full body shot, just his face, smiling tentatively at the camera. His face was still round, still recognizably the same Ryan, but there were subtle changes, less puffiness, a defined jawline emerging from what had once been a continuous slope from cheek to neck. He stared at the photo for a long time before adding a caption, 279 days in. Still not where I'm going, but no longer where I started. Thank you all for walking with me. His thumb hovered over the post button. This would change everything. Once his face was out there, his anonymous journey would become irrevocably linked to his real identity. If someone from work found the account, they might connect it to the viral video. The thought made his stomach clench. But another voice, stronger now after months of therapy and small victories, pushed back against the fear. Why should he be ashamed? He wasn't the villain of that viral video. He was its survivor. He was the one who got back up, who decided to change, who showed up day after day. Ryan pressed post, then put his phone away, heart racing as if he'd just completed one of his morning runs. By the time he reached his stop, the post had over 1,000 likes and hundreds of comments. But Ryan didn't check them. Tonight, this victory was just for him. 1 year and 17 days after the viral video that had changed his life, Ryan stood in the conference room of his marketing firm, preparing for the most important presentation of his career. At 248 pounds, he was still clinically obese. But the 139 pounds he'd lost had transformed not only his appearance, but how he moved through the world, with confidence, with purpose, with the knowledge that his body was a work in progress rather than a prison sentence. The fitness chain that had once questioned his ability to understand motivation was now requesting him specifically for their nationwide rebranding. The marketing director who had humiliated him was long gone, replaced by a new team that knew Ryan only as the brilliant designer whose campaigns had increased their membership by 22%. "You ready for this?" Jake asked, arranging presentation materials on the conference table. Ryan nodded, straightening his new suit, one that had been tailored to his body rather than purchased from a specialty big and tall shop. More than ready. The truth was, Ryan's professional confidence had grown alongside his personal transformation. His Instagram account, now with over 200,000 followers, had taught him how to tell his story authentically, how to connect with an audience, how to be vulnerable without being weak. Those skills translated perfectly to his design work, infusing his campaigns with an emotional resonance that competitors couldn't match. The meeting was a success. The clients impressed not just with Ryan's designs, but with his presence, his articulation, his easy command of the room. As they filed out with handshakes and promises of a long partnership, Ryan felt a sense of completion, not of his journey, but of a chapter that had begun with humiliation in this very room. "We should celebrate," Jake suggested as they packed up. "A few of us are going for drinks after work. You should join." In the past, Ryan had always declined such invitations, certain he wouldn't fit in, literally and figuratively. But now he smiled. "I'd like that." Later, at a crowded bar in River North, Ryan sat with his colleagues, nursing a single beer instead of his once customary multiple cocktails. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and shop talk. Ryan contributed occasionally, but found himself somewhat distracted by the notifications continuously lighting up his phone. Earlier that day, in a moment of impulse, he had finally shared the full story on his Instagram, including screenshots of the viral video that had started it all. The post had exploded, picked up by several news outlets and shared by major wellness accounts. His follow account had jumped by tens of thousands in just hours. "You're popular tonight," Jake observed, nodding toward Ryan's buzzing phone. Ryan hesitated, then made a decision. "Can I show you guys something?" He pulled up his Instagram profile and passed his phone around the table. His colleagues scrolled through in silence, their expressions shifting from curiosity to recognition to something like awe. "Wait, this is you?" Emma from accounting asked. "My sister follows this account. She's lost 30 pounds following your meal plans." "I don't have meal plans," Ryan corrected gently. "I just share what works for me." "Dude, you're basically famous," another colleague said, continuing to scroll. "How have you never mentioned this?" Ryan shrugged. "It wasn't relevant to work. And it's still weird to me, having strangers invested in my life." "You should monetize this," Jake suggested. always thinking like a marketer. Sponsors would pay big for access to your audience. Cheetah. The old Ryan might have jumped at the validation, the opportunity to profit from his struggle, but the new Ryan, or perhaps just the real Ryan finally emerging, shook his head. That's not what it's about for me. It started as a way to hold myself accountable, and now, I guess it's about showing people that change is possible, even when it seems impossible. As they continued talking, Ryan's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. He excused himself to take the call in the quieter entryway of the bar. "Is this Ryan Mitchell?" a woman's voice asked. "This is Melissa Banks from Good Morning America. We've seen your incredible story on Instagram, and we'd love to have you on the show next week to talk about your journey." Ryan nearly dropped the phone. Good Morning America, a national audience, millions of viewers. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. I'd need to check my work schedule," he stammered. "Of course," Melissa replied. "We're flexible. Your story is powerful, Ryan. People need to hear it from you directly." After getting the details and promising to call back, Ryan returned to the table in a daze. His colleagues, sensing something had happened, looked at him expectantly. "That was Good Morning America," he said, still not quite believing it himself. "They want me on the show." The table erupted in excitement, questions, congratulations, advice. Ryan absorbed it all with a surreal sense of detachment. Just over a year ago, he had been at his lowest point, humiliated on the internet, using food to numb the pain of existing in a world that seemed determined to remind him of his worthlessness. Now he was being invited to share his story on national television. Later that night, alone in his apartment, a new one, in a building with a fitness center he actually used, Ryan called his sister, the only close family he had left since their mother's passing. "Do you think Mom would be proud?" he asked after telling her about the Good Morning America invitation. "Ryan," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "Mom was always proud of you. But yes, she'd be over the moon about this. Not because you lost weight, but because you found your voice." The day of the Good Morning America appearance arrived with a flurry of nerves and excitement. In the green room, Ryan scrolled through his Instagram, reading messages from followers who had heard he would be on the show. One in particular caught his attention. A direct message from a username he recognized with a jolt, "The Real Planet Fall." It was from one of the men who had recorded the viral video, the one who had made the "land whale" comment. Ryan's hand shook slightly as he opened it. "I don't expect forgiveness," the message read. "What I did was cruel and inexcusable, but I want you to know that your journey forced me to confront my own ugliness. I'm in therapy now, working on being someone my daughter can be proud of. Thank you for turning our worst interaction into your catalyst instead of your defeat." Ryan read the message 3 times, unsure how to feel. There was no obligation to forgive, as the man had acknowledged. But there was power in knowing that his journey had rippled outward, affecting even those who had once hurt him. Before he could decide whether to respond, a production assistant appeared to escort him to the set. As the lights brightened and the hosts welcomed him warmly, Ryan felt a moment of clarity. He wasn't here as a weight loss success story, though that was the hook that had gotten him the invitation. He was here as someone who had reclaimed his humanity in a world eager to reduce people to their appearances, their viral moments, their worst days. "So, Ryan," the host began after introducing him, "your story has captivated hundreds of thousands of people online. Tell us, what made you decide to make such a dramatic change?" Ryan looked directly into the camera, imagining all the people watching who might be where he once was, hiding from the world, defined by their limitations, believing that change was for other people, but not for them. "It wasn't one decision," he said. "It was thousands of decisions, day after day, to believe that I deserved better than the life I was living. And that's the message I hope people take from my story. Change isn't about waiting for motivation or inspiration to strike. It's about showing up for yourself, especially on the days when you don't want to." As the interview continued, Ryan spoke with a confidence that would have been unimaginable to the man who had once crashed to the pavement on Michigan Avenue. He was no longer defined by that moment, by his weight, or even by his weight loss. He was defined by his resilience, his compassion for himself and others on similar journeys, and his unwavering belief that it's never too late to begin again. When the segment ended, Ryan checked his phone to find his follower count approaching 500,000 and his inbox flooded with messages. Among them was an email from a publishing house, inquiring about a potential book deal. Standing in Times Square after the interview, Ryan took a moment to absorb the surreal turn his life had taken. A year ago, leaving his apartment had been an exercise in anxiety and shame. Now, he stood in one of the most crowded places in America, visible and unafraid. He opened Instagram and took a photo of himself with the Good Morning America studio visible in the background. His caption was simple: Day 382, still showing up, still changing, still grateful for every step of this journey, even the falls that taught me how to rise. As Ryan pressed post and slipped his phone back into his pocket, he felt something he had been searching for his entire life. Not the validation of others, but a deep, abiding respect for himself and the strength he'd found along the way. The journey wasn't over. It never would be. But for the first time, Ryan was truly looking forward to what came next.